In 1991, the winds of change swept through the country as South Africa headed to its first democratic elections. Jack Clark, then chairman of Telkom and key architect of South Africa's telecommunications industry, realized that stringing wire over large distances to serve scattered and small populations of people was not feasible. Radio-type technology had to be the future. At this time, only 1 in 10 South Africans had a phone. They were mostly based in white urban areas. So Clark sent a task team overseas, led by young visionary and later CEO of Vodacom, Alan Craig, to investigate cellular technology.
Alan tells the story that he walked into his office one day and said, don't you want to go overseas and find out more about this thing called cell phones? So they went and they investigated it, and it was clear for them right from the beginning that they should go the route of GSM technology. And that's what they came back and reported, but they had to fight to get that option because analog technology was actually cheaper, but it would have been the more expensive option in the long run.
Telecom's event, Telkom 93, was a key milestone in the cellular industry, not just because the first base station allowed the public to get a taste of walking and talking on cordless phones, but the government announced its intention to license 2 cellular network operators. 5 bidders applied for a license, and in September, mobile giants MTN and Vodacom came out on top. No sooner had these been awarded did a battle erupt with incoming government, the ANC, and the trade unions, who felt this was a feeble attempt of the National Party to leave a lasting mark by awarding licenses to their buddies.
It was then they agreed that they needed negotiations around this process. And fortunately, at that time, South Africa was involved in negotiations on all sorts of important aspects of the country going forward. So the forum was already there at COSATU and Kempton Park. And this issue then became part of the agenda. It took quite a while for the parties to see eye to eye, and Cyril and Rolf Meyer played a big role in that. And in fact, the one day Cyril actually walked into the room and said, well, listen, if you guys can't agree, then maybe you should just call a political stalemate and, call it off. And that really pulled everyone into focus, and they suddenly realized, well, they really have to try and reach an agreement.
After 3 weeks of intense talks, an agreement was reached and the first major black economic empowerment deals in South Africa signed. In Vodacom's case, trade unions received a 5% stake for 90 million rand, sold in the early 2000s for a record 1.5 billion rand, making it one of the most lucrative empowerment deals ever. And now the battle lines have been drawn again, with COSATU's efforts in the courts and ICASA's 11th hour call for Vodacom's listing to be scuppered. As the new democracy dawned in 1994, MTN and Vodacom worked hard at convincing skeptics that cell phones would revolutionize their lives.
The security guard immediately understood it. And it was an interesting contrast because when you went in and had the meeting with the editor, it took a lot more convincing for the editor to understand this because he did have access to a telephone. So he didn't have that need and he didn't really understand immediately what it would be. A lot of people actually said, who would want to walk around with talking on a phone? And we really had to convince people that it was a viable option.
When MTN and Vodacom signed up their first subscribers on the 1st of June 1994, even they were stunned at how hungry South Africans were to be connected.
The day that they launched, the 1st of June 1994, they had 10,000 subscribers sign up. I mean, they just had no idea what to do with the level of interest. In the first 2 years, their target was 100,000 subscribers, and they got that in the first 5 months. So a lot of what they had planned was just completely blown out of the water because, in effect, the time for mobile handsets had come.
But one problem was hindering the growth of the telecommunications industry in South Africa. The majority of the population was unbanked and not creditworthy. Enter a first world innovation in 1996, prepaid airtime.
Contract or the postpaid solution was not working for the market, which is why prepaid was launched, and it was a huge success. And that, if you look at worldwide, prepaid has taken over totally, and it's the most popular billing platform on mobile.
Prepaid really was the rocket fuel, the second boost to the industry that made airtime a fast-moving consumer good, an FMCG, instead of a luxury or something that you had to buy on credit. So now you could buy your cell phone and your airtime on the shelf at the spaza shop, even at traffic lights, in the pharmacy, at Pick and Pay next to the cashier, and it really just boosted the industry.
Today, prepaid customers account for 90% of Vodacom's total client base. The company has a 95% coverage of the South African market, but has extended its footprint into sub-Saharan Africa with operations in Mozambique, Tanzania, the DRC, as well as Lesotho, giving it a total of 37.8 million subscribers. Whilst Vodacom owns the lion's share of the local market, making it the king of South African telecommunications, it still has a way to go to compete with MTN, who takes the crown for the African continent, with operations in 21 countries and a total customer base of 100 million people. With the local cellular market reaching saturation point, where will growth for South Africa's mobile giant come from?
They are focusing on going into a lot of other directions, internet, broadband, democratizing the internet in the same way that's been done with telephones. So that is going to be a huge new area of their business. They recently acquired Gateway Communications. With Gateway, it really makes them a leader in Africa, and it doesn't have to be necessarily going head-to-head with an MTN. There are a lot of different opportunities that they're looking into, and the playing field is huge.
Recently, they've done a few small investments in different areas. So, for example, they recently did an investment in a social media company called Zupi, based in Cape Town. Very small investment, but I find that very interesting because they're looking at other avenues like social networking and media content via mobile phones.
Vodacom has a very significant brand, which is never to be discounted, and they have all the leverage that comes from being part of the Vodafone group. So for instance, when the Apple iPhone launches the second version, the 3G model, Vodacom was able to exclusively offer that in South Africa. And there's also significant buying power that goes into being part of such a large group. So they will be able to negotiate volume handset sales and be able to get a significant discount on that.
From big brick phones to iPhones and Blackberries to who knows what next, the explosion of the cellular industry has taken even the greatest visionaries by surprise. And the company, born as the new democracy dawned, now covers most corners of the country and has become a well-known brand and resourceful partner in the new South Africa. Its relationship with Vodafone will enable it to extend its global footprint, its tie-in with Gateway, and inroad into the lucrative African market. There's no doubt it wants to answer the call to Africa, but how they'll compete with the mighty MTN remains to be seen.